my name is Judy and I'm the City Stitcher, and welcome to my Flosstube channel. Today is Sunday, June the 6th, and I hate to break it to you, but in a few short weeks we will be halfway through the year. Hard to believe, isn't it? I feel like this year is just flying by. It is a somewhat sunny, somewhat overcast gray kind of day. It was pretty cloudy this morning, but the sun is sort of coming out. I'm looking over here because there's dark clouds coming over here. We have come through a glorious week of weather. My kind of weather. Weather that makes me super excited and happy and joyous. So the temperatures were in the high 80s for most of this last week, which meant Judy had a great time. Loved it all. Many Slurpee days, which also makes me very excited. Makes lots of other people here very unexcited. They don't like that kind of weather. It's not a typical temperature range for us. Even in the height of summer, we don't get a lot of those days. But those are my kind of numbers and I love it. So I've thoroughly enjoyed this last week. Glorious sunny days with Slurpees also mean not quite as much stitching time as I sometimes have, because I'm outside enjoying the glorious weather and having my Slurpee. So yeah, I'm hoping that we have a lovely summer and we get a lot of that kind of weather. I know that there's like 27 of us in the city that are hoping for that, and I think everybody else is hoping it won't be quite so warm, but I think that would be lovely. So that, of course, meant as we came into the weekend, the forecast was cloudy, rainy, all that kind of stuff. And I'm actually okay with that. After a glorious week of really warm temperatures, I totally acknowledge that we need some rain. I'm okay with that. I'm even okay that it's happening on the weekend, because I still found time during the week to be outside and enjoying the sunshine. And the weather when it turned. So yesterday was an interesting weather day. Cloudy, rainy, huge thunderstorm warnings, lightning, tornado warnings, hail in certain parts. So, you know, it was an interesting weather day. So we are recording this again, sort of when it started to get a little brighter. I was like ready to go. So we're going to try and get this in, because if it turns gray and cloudy and rainy and haily, this is not going to be the great room to film in. So with that, let's get on with the show. As you've seen from the title for this particular video, let's talk Jeanette Douglas, Jeanette Douglas June. So with my 2021 stitching plan, where I'm starting a new project every month, my focus this month is going to be on a piece by Jeanette Douglas. So we'll be talking about her designs towards the end of this particular video, and in a little bit after I've shown you everything else, I'll talk about my new start for the month of June. But it has been an interesting stitching weekend, because I've had lots of things to work on, most of which you've seen before. So we're going to go through those right off the get-go. Starting with everybody's favorite, the Never-Ending Nativity. Yeah, still on the Never-Ending Nativity, the Bethlehem Star, center panel, blah, 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 etc., etc. Okay, I forgot to say, if you're new to my channel, thank you for stopping by and spending some time with me. If you're a returning viewer, thank you for coming back. Anyway, I really do appreciate it. So there's the Never-Ending Nativity. So what did I get accomplished this week? I honestly don't remember exactly what my goal is. I feel like I sort of got it accomplished. Just looking at the back going, okay. So what did I get accomplished? So I finished all of the back stitching over here in this lovely pink angel. So the back stitching, it's going to be hard for you to tell. So there is back stitching, more back stitching here in the wings that I've done. There were multiple colors of back stitching here in her dress, some here in the robe, some around the skin of where her arms is. Those ones are really hard to tell. To be perfectly honest, I'm not sure it really did much, but I followed the instructions and put them in. There's one more bit of back stitching that comes just around here, around the outside, but it comes all the way along here. And then of course, since I have to do all the cross stitches down here, I figured I needed to get those in before I did that. So there's only one more color left in this one. So then I came across here, and then I unstitched some things. So before, there was some gray here in her hair, and I put in the called for color. And I noted that it was supposed to be the same as, that the colors were supposed to be the same between these two angels for that particular section, but it had been done in a different color over here. And again, don't forget, this is a sort of inherited piece where a lot of the pink angel was done before. And I think this is actually the better choice of color. I felt the one that I had over here was too dark. So I have now cut that out. I have not put the new color in. And then I started on getting, again, man, this is really not showing up well. So there, I've started to put in the Krynic. So I've started with the gold Krynic, and I think I'm about halfway through that. So it's never as much as I feel like I should get accomplished, but we'll talk about a little bit why that was. So my goal for this week is to really finish all of the cross stitching. So whether it's half stitch or full cross stitches, that is my goal for this week. So put the part back into her hair. She's got some Krynic that goes around her head as well. So there's actually a fair chunk there. So I'm not saying to myself that I'm going to get the back stitching done this week. My goal is to get the cross stitches done. And there's actually a fair chunk there to be done again in this top 2/3. So again, it would be filling in these spots down here as well. So yeah, that's the goal for this week on this particular project. And so I think the forecast this week is it's a little cloudier, not quite such warm temperature. So I figure that means that I'm going to have a little bit more stitching time because I won't be spending so much time outside. All right. Then after all of my big debates about May, because I filmed last week, which was May 30th, and in my head I wasn't going to be doing a lot of stitching on, you know, May 30th, May 31st, and then I totally changed my mind and said, no, I should really do a bunch. So I did. So here was my May focus piece for Mirabilia May. So this is April's Blue Diamond. So she was started May 1st. And I'm actually quite happy with what I got accomplished in those waning 36 hours of May. Let's see how she... So yeah, I'm actually quite happy with how this worked out. So what happened is I got sort of all of this dark blue along here was what I got done. So again, I'm actually really happy with my progress. I think, you know, for, well, accomplishment number 1, she got started. Yay! That's fantastic. And I think I've made really good progress. There's a little bit, I wanted to say, oh yeah, these are the 2. That's not true. I worked on the blue over here. These were here before. These were mostly completed. These blank spots in here are for the flowers. It's this blue over here. So it would have been nice if I could have gotten this filled in with the, there's one more blue in the white, but didn't happen. But it was still more than was here last week. So I'm ending the month of May in a really good spot. I'm happy with my progress on this. And this is supposed to come out in 2022 as well. Because don't forget, I have a 5-year stitching plan. I know it's a little bit weird, but I really like my stitching plan. Okay, so that was my May focus piece, but I did work on other things, and even again in my waning 36 hours of May, I worked on Faerie Winter Dream by Nora Corbett. Oh yeah. April's Blue Diamond, I am doing that on 32 count Lugana from Picture This Plus in the color Aerial. This one, of course, I'm not doing on the called for fabric either. And I'm having a little bit of a chuckle here because you may or may not be able to guess what's just happened, but somebody's just started mowing their lawn. How do these people not understand that just after noon on a Sunday that I'm anyway. So here is Faerie Winter Dream. So my goal for this one was when I had left these 2 strands of DMC for the skin. Turns out I can't count. There weren't 2 strands, there were 3 strands, and so my entire goal was to get those in, finish up that little bit. And so that actually gave me quite a bit of this neckline. So sort of all of the center part here has been filled in. Again, I am doing the skin 1/1. Personal choice means I'm slow, etc., etc., all sorts of things. So I got that accomplished, was very happy with that. I felt it filled in quite nicely. There was a part of me that said if I could have found another couple of hours, I probably could have gotten the rest of this filled in, but my goal was 3 strands and I got them in and I moved on. So again, she's definitely in the 2022 plans as well. Yeah. She is being done on 28 count Midnight Tryst Jobelan by Fabrics by Stephanie. So yes, I thought that was glorious as well. All right, so then of course on Tuesday, so that was the stitching for Sunday and Monday. Tuesday came along and I was supposed to start my new project for June, Jeanette Douglas. One of my tasks, which I talked about last week, is that I needed to get my fabric serged. So I did my typical thing. I hauled out my fabric. I second guessed my fabric. I went into my fabric stash. I got a couple more pieces of fabric, hauled them out, thought, pondered, contemplated, stayed with the original choice. Anyway, so then I cut my fabric, was doing something else, was looking at the fabric and went, for some reason in my head, I went, that doesn't look right. So I remeasured the cut fabric that I'd already cut and discovered I had cut it the wrong size. Now, I have more fabric in my house. That was fine. Still had more of the same color that I had chosen. So I cut another piece. And I really think I've got a piece that is incredibly wonky as part of the problem. So I've just figured I have to ignore the part that I think is wonky and I'm not talking about it, but I was just like, it was a little bit frustrating. I also, the serger that my friend gave me as a gift, I decided that I wanted to serge my fabric with white thread as opposed to olive and green, just because I have these moments where, anyway, I decided I was going to go with white. So that also meant that I had to learn how to actually thread my machine. That took longer than expected. You would think that if I just followed it along, it would have been fine. So I've solved the problem. I've downloaded the manual from the website. I've successfully rethreaded my machine. It's all set up, ready to go now, forever in time. It's all going to be good. So I got my fabric done, and then I finally got to start. I took all of that on Tuesday night, and then I finally got to start. So here is my project, my focus project for the month of June, besides the never-ending Nativity. The Canadian Patriotic Sampler by Jeanette Douglas. I love this. And again, part of it I think has to do with the fact that I've seen the actual model. Now, I will say, am I going to be entirely faithful to this design? No. I'm going to do a lot of it's going to be mostly faithful to the design, but already in my head, there are a number of things that I'm going to be changing. Some of them you'll see right off the get-go. So there it is. And here is my skirt. Yes, I'm going to put the clips on again. All right. So not a bad start. So I have started this at the top which for many of you, if you've watched a lot of my things, you'll go, even that is a little bit unusual for me because I tend to be a center starter because I have this weird thing where my piece needs to be centered on the fabric I'm using. Now, what it meant is that I found the center, then I actually counted up to the top and then started. But anyway, so it's coming along. So I'm clearly working in this top band, which is the plaid. 3 colors make up the plaid. So one of them is now finished. So the red that I have used is Gloriana Poinsettia, which is the called for. So I've got 2 more colors left to go to make up the plaid and then fill in those maple leaves. So I figured that by doing this color completion, it would actually set myself up pretty well for filling in the remaining 2 colors in the plaid, because now it sort of is more or less just a fill in. This is absolutely an example of read your pattern. Read your pattern, read your pattern, read your pattern. So I almost didn't read my pattern before I started this. And then I went, it's Jeannette. It's Jeannette. She usually has wonderful things to say in there that point you in the right direction to do things well. And that is absolutely the case in this. So even for something as simple as this, because you've got these angles here, and she was very clear that, let's see if we can't get in there. So you'll see these little bits here, and in the instructions it says these work better if you stitch them as a full cross stitch 1 over 1 as opposed to trying to fill it in as just a quarter stitch. Just to make sure this is as full as you are on these angles that make up these diamonds. So I was glad I stopped and read my instructions for that. The other thing, so one of the things that I've done differently here is I am not using the called for fabric. I'm actually having the moment saying, I don't remember what the called for is. It's brown, so it's not really me. What did she do this on? So she stitched the model for this on 36 count platinum from Zweigart. So not an over-dyed, so that's a solid color. Platinum for me. So in my head, platinum is more of a gray, but when I look at most of the platinum fabric, I go, it's more brown than it's gray for me. Maybe for people it's grayish, but it's more brown than I like. So I, of course, did not use platinum. And again, so her model stitch was on 36 count. I am doing mine on 32 count pearl gray Lugana. And again, so I looked at, I have multiple gray fabrics in my stash. I looked at several of them, came back pearl gray was the right answer. I think it's going to be lovely. Lovely, lovely, lovely. I'm very excited about this. Now, let's talk a little bit about this. So for this particular chart, along with many Jeanette Douglases, you can buy a thread pack that goes with this. So the called for fibers for this are, let me just count. So there are 7 called for silks, which is what the model would have been stitched in. For every Jeanette Douglas chart, yeah, she uses specialty fibers, whether it's silks or whether she used fancy floss, the over-dyed cotton flosses. But regardless, there is always a DMC conversion provided in the chart. So there are people who don't like working with silks, and so you don't have to work with silks. She provides a DMC cotton floss conversion on all of her charts. All of them. There's no other word, all of them. Now, the difference is she is using a DMC conversion, which means some of the effect that you get as compared to some of the called for is that you don't get the variegation. Now, it's going to be, welcome to cameras and changing lights, the clouds are coming in. It's probably going to be a little hard to tell, but you can see it like notably over here, right? Sort of as you're coming around here versus some of these other blocks of red. So this poinsettia is variegated. So it goes from a darker red to a brighter red. And you know, again, I don't know how well you can see it on camera. And even when you're looking at it in real life, you don't look at this and you go like, wow, that's variegated. But there is some tonality shading in here, which I like. I think this is a glorious red. I think it looks fantastic. So I ended up not getting the thread pack for this particular chart for a couple of reasons. When I looked at the threads that were called for, I had, out of the 7 of them, I had 4. And so from a cost perspective, it was cheaper for me to buy the skeins of the missing threads than it was for me to buy the thread pack, because I only had to buy a few of them. We talked about this with the, I showed you last week as part of my Stashquisitions that for Beautiful Bouquet number 6, I bought the thread pack. That's because there's a lot of colors in there. I did not have a lot of those colors, and that's where it becomes, it's more cost effective to buy the thread pack than it is to buy the individual colors. And again, I saw the model of that, blah, 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 etc., etc. Anyway, so for this one, I ended up just buying the extra colors that I did not already have in my stash. All right. I feel like I have something else to say about this. Oh, yeah. Now, it also does mean, so here are the called for fibers. Do this. So here are the called for, not surprisingly. So there's multiple reds. So here's the red that I've started. It looks like a big mess. So here are the called for fabrics. Here are the called for fibers, which even on my changed fabric, going from platinum to gray, I think these are still going to look fantastic. Now, the words for this sampler are done in this color, which is Arroyo from Gloriana. Yeah, sorry, there's glare there. Now, the interesting thing is I thought this was going to work, but when I was looking at this, I was like, there's a little too much brown in this particular overdyed for me. So again, it makes sense in the context of her model stitch, what she did, because she was doing it on platinum, which is more brown than the gray fabric that I'm using. So that caused me to go, not that I needed it right away, so I was like, you've got time to go out and solve this. So I ran off and so this is actually part of my Stashquisitions. So what I've ended up picking up, and again, because I do want an overdyed, you know, so all of these words here are done in what I've now chosen. So I just wanted one that was more gray, but still had variegation in it. So I have chosen Waterlilies Graphite. Now, it's me, and you know that I like to have multiple options so I can try things out, and then half the time I go back and I go with what I did originally. So I have also pulled from my stash, I also have Gloriana True Gray. So it's a little bit lighter, so I just wasn't sure that that was going to work. And again, don't forget, this is going to strand down, so it's not going to look as intense as this. And since I was, you know, off, you know, looking at grays, so I also picked up Dinky Dye's Distant Thunder. So when we get to that section, those are my 3 options for the gray that I'm going to use for the words. I think I'm going with this one, but check back. We'll see what I end up going with. So regardless, I think the color palette is lovely, and I love it on the gray. Now, I'm showing you this color palette. Technically, this is not the full color palette for me because I am planning on making a few changes, but I'm not going to bring those other colors until we hit those spots. So, yes, it's a little bit of a tease, a little bit of a taunt. All right. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is coverage. So when I first started working on this, her models tend to be done on 36 count linen, and she uses one strand of the silk over two linen threads for her models. I, of course, took the size from 36 down to 32 count and started and was like, oh, I don't know how I'm feeling about this. Is the coverage okay? Is the coverage not okay? So I have decided, again, so when you look it up really, really close, I don't know, let's see. Yeah, so there you go. When you look at it really, really close, does it look like it's really full coverage? And the answer is when you're up really close, it's not as full coverage as I like. But when you hold it back, again, you got to stand back from your work and look at it. I think the coverage is fine. Now, this is for doing the cross stitches. This is with the Gloriana threads. When I was looking for my alternate grays, I had my moments where I'm like, I don't know that one strand of the Dinky dyes or whether one strand of the Caron Waterlilies is going to be enough. So I may have to play with that. There are also, certainly for the center part of these diamonds, those are done with satin stitches. And whether or not, when I'm doing satin stitch over 32 count, whether or not one strand is going to be sufficient is totally up for debate. I don't know that it is. So those might be instances where it's called for one and I may choose to do it using two so that I get the coverage that I want, again, because I'm doing it on 32 count as opposed to 36. But my focus for this week, well, step number one, finish the plaid, which I think is actually going to go reasonably fast. Again, because it's just filling in these little spots left, and there's two colors there, and getting these maple leaves in the center of the diamonds done. So I'm expecting by next week that I will know the answer as to whether or not I'm using one strand or two strands for the satin stitch. And then I'm probably gonna come over here and do this set of maple leaves over here, but I might just try to get some words done. Who knows? Step number one, finish the top band and move on from there. So yeah, I thought it was a reasonable start since I had such a horrible time on the Tuesday night, couldn't cut my fabric right, had a problem with serger, so I didn't get a huge amount of stitching done on Tuesday night because it was all prep work, which I know should have been done before, but whatever. But then it started to come along. And the poinsettia, the Gloriana poinsettia silk, I love it on this fabric. I'm very happy with my fabric choice for this one. So that is my new start for June. Jeanette Douglas, June, Canadian Patriotic Sampler. Yes, I'm really looking forward to this. Still need to work on the Never-Ending Nativity. Okay, and with that, so Stashquisitions, it's been, well, in terms of Stashquisitions arriving into my home, it's been not a lot. Doesn't mean I did put in another order for something else, and we'll see when it shows up. The order that I had put into the US still has not been shipped, and that's okay. I think they're waiting for a piece of fabric. I thought they had the fabric in stock and they don't, and that's okay. I'm totally fine waiting for it. As you know, it's not like I need that fabric for this year anyway. So, sorry, I'm just looking over here going, okay. So Stashquisitions. So the Stashquisitions included, again, these two silks for my Jeanette Douglas. Those go straight into the bag. I picked up a couple of weeks dye works. This is Chablis. This is for a project in the 5-year plan, so this is also going to go into a bag as usual. This is not the called for weeks dye works for that particular chart, but I have seen someone who did a conversion on Instagram, and so I went, ooh, I think that looked fantastic, so I rushed right out and got those so that those can go into the bag. Picked up, yeah, yet another one. This is PB10. This is for actually, now that I'm saying this, I'm looking at this going, wait a minute, oh, I remember what I got. This is also for the Jeanette Douglas Canadian Patriotic Sampler. I know I was having this, I'm like, wait a minute, what are you using this for? No, this is also for the Jeanette Douglas. And again, so clearly not called for. It needs to go over there. I should make a note of that. It needs to go sit in that bag as well. And last week when I was showing them, I had probably had a weird look on my face when I showed the Purple Onion Velveteen from Lady Dot Crates, because I knew that I had bought 2 packages, not of the same color. And so this week I, of course, found the other one. So this, I also, at the same time, I got this Berry Crush. Now, if I am really well behaved and I do something good this year, there is a chance that by the end of this year I will have turned something into a fully finished thing. I don't know that I'm going to be 100% successful at that, but I now have something to finish it off with. I checked with a friend of mine who agreed that this was the right color. Now all I have to do is get myself together. Surely in the next 6 months, I can pull myself together and get this accomplished. I'm not going to tell you what it is because then nobody can hold me account for it. So anyway, I've now bought the stuff to finish it. Let's see if by the end of the year, I actually can turn something that I've previously shown into a fully finished object. All right, so that's Stashquisitions. A little bit about Stitch from Stash. So clearly I'd fallen off the bandwagon back in April, early May, and I fell off the bandwagon resoundly. July 1st is coming, so we are going to be attempting round 2 of Judy trying to behave herself well, and it's going to be a little bit of a challenge, don't get me wrong. So what's coming up in the back half of 2021? Well, there's going to be another Needlework Expo. So I don't have the dates right off the top of my head. I think it's towards the end of August, but it could be early September. I don't know, somewhere in there. Of course, we've had a bunch of the May releases that have come out. I've done really well about not buying a lot of them, but there are a couple that are on my list. And sadly, you know, you've got these crazy designers who are coming out with stuff all the time. And here's the other funny thing. I was talking to another friend of mine. It's really sad. They've picked up on my sentence about, you know, do I like this more than something that I already have in my stash? And she's using it very effectively, and I'm using it not as effectively. Sometimes it's very effective. Sometimes it's not as effective for me. So I'm glad I could help her because it's working out really well for her and only somewhat well for me. Anyway. July 1st, we are going back on the bandwagon of trying to behave ourselves with our Stashquisitioning. So I'm back. I will be back in Stitch from Stash and posting and reporting and all that kind of stuff. Hopefully round 2, I will have learned. Anyway, we may still have a little bit of a problem because as I discovered in round 1, part of the problem is if you have no finishes. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've got a budget of $25 a month, so I still can buy things, and really what you're supposed to be buying is stuff to help you finish the projects you're working on, or kitting up, right? So I have been working on trying to kit up stuff for 2022, which reminds me I should probably sit down and have I'm running out of June, so I need to have another look at my 2022 and see how that one's shaping up. I think it's coming okay. So I have been actually behind the scenes kitting stuff up and putting them into their bags and getting them ready to go. So that's been coming along. I should look at that. Anyway, July 1. back on the bandwagon. Stitch from stash. Let's see if I can't do a better job this time. All right. And again, I will say there a lot of the starts in the back half of 2021 are not projects that are going to get finished. So again, it could get interesting there. Check back later. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully I can rein myself in. Again, let's hope it's all mermaids and farm animals, chickens, cows, donkeys, goats, all of that stuff. Trucks up the wazoo. Not that any of those are horrible, but they just don't usually appeal to me. So I'm hoping for a lot of those just to help me with my Stitch from Stash plans. Anyway. All right. July 1, back on the bandwagon. I've got 2 weeks. See, it's bad already. I've got 2 weeks to shop before I have to get back on the bandwagon. But I really should look at my 2022 plans and see how that's coming along. All right. And with that, let's get into the topic. Jeanette Douglas designs. So Jeanette Douglas, I know. I've met her. I have her phone number. I can talk to her. We have great conversations when we catch up. She does fantastic designs. She does fantastic designs. A lot of people, when they look at Jeanette's, they are intimidated because she does tend to use specialty stitches. And my answer to that is, please, please, please do not hesitate working on a Jeanette Douglas Designs pattern because you are afraid of doing the specialty stitches. If she's got specialty stitches in there, she has got phenomenal stitch diagrams in there. And as I've said before, for specialty stitches, certainly on the ones that I've done, so Frida's Fancy Stitching, Jeanette Douglas, they've got fantastic stitch diagrams. If you can do a connect the dot picture, you can stitch the specialty stitches, period. Don't let them intimidate you. Don't be afraid. Don't hesitate picking up a Jeanette Douglas pattern because you're intimidated. And we're going to talk about that because I'm going to go through a bunch of Jeanette Douglas's. So these are not all of the Jeanette Douglas charts that I have, but I'm just going to, it's the typical, I'm just going to do a random roundup. So the one that I'm going to start with is this Patriotic Sampler. So this is the Patriotic Sampler that she did first for, of course, the Americans. And after many years, actually let's see, copyright 2014. So after many years of this one being out, so clearly she's a Canadian designer, she felt that she should do a Canadian one. So she did the Canadian one, and I think it's fantastic. Yay! But I have this one as well. There's lots of things about this one that appeals to me, but I would need to so this one I have in my head, I would have to redesign this. So I wouldn't stitch the Star Spangled Words because I'm not an American. But there are lots of aspects in this chart that I really love them. I love the color palette. I just need to rework this one so that I can stitch it as a Canadian. So I figured let's do the Canadian one first, which even the Canadian one, I'm changing a couple of things. And then, one of these days, I have the stuff to do this. Don't kid yourself. In fact, I think that's why I had so many. That's why I had so many of the crossover colors, is because I think a lot of them, like the white and the reds, I think are used in this one as well. Anyway, so there's that one. Now, she has a whole series of these Take Time To. So these are small charts. Where's the stitch count on this one? So the stitch count on this is 64 by 64. So on a 36 count, which of course is what she usually does her model stitches on, it's 3 5/8 square. So these are not big charts. There are quite a few specialty stitches in this, which is why it looks as interesting as it does. So she has done 2 releases of this. There was the original one. This is the 15th anniversary edition. I do not have the thread pack for this because this is very brown. And so I love the design. I love the concept. I love what she's done with this. but I'm going to have to change the color palette. So that's an example of one where I have chosen not to get the thread pack for this because I'm going to have to change the colors so that it turns into a Judy looking Take Time to Stitch. So she's got Take Time to Stitch, she's got Take Time to Read, she's got Take Time to Collect, she's got Take Time to Quilt, she's got Take Time to, I don't know, I feel like there's 12 other things on there. So if you've got a hobby, Take Time to Knit for sure is in there. So yes, if you've got other hobbies that you're interested in, just have a look, because she could easily have Take Time to fill in the blank. So I have several of these. Now, because of course we're all stitchers, so she's done a series for a couple of them again. So this is called Spring Stitches. So same thing. So this is a small one, 66 by 66. So this is less, so bigger than 3 inches, less than 4 inches square when it's done. So this is the spring version. So this is spring stitches. So there's also summer stitches. Autumn stitches. And winter stitches. So again, all of these do have specialty stitches in them. Do not let that hold you back. The stitch diagrams are fantastic. They are fantastic. And again, if you work slowly and you concentrate and you follow the numbers, it all works out. If you're really worried, have a scrap piece of fabric beside you. If you've bought the thread kit, don't use the thread from the thread kit. Just pick up some DMC and practice the specialty stitch in a spare piece of fabric that you have, if you're really worried about it. And I think that's when you will discover that they're not as bad and they're not even remotely scary once you start doing them, as long as you've got a good stitch diagram. And Jeanette Douglas does fantastic stitch diagrams. Fantastic. So she's also, so these are some of her older charts. Where's the copyright on this one? Interesting, I can't even find the copyright on this. Oh well, this is an older one for sure. So this is called Summer at the Ocean. So again, she's done a number of smaller ones. So again, these were some of the earlier ones where you could do them as like a really small sampler, but she's also shown them where she's done them as these needle rolls. So this is Summer at the Ocean. And, you know, summer, winter, I didn't even look, a Rocky Mountain Christmas. So again, so she shows it if you just want to do it as a small sampler. Again, this is not going to be terribly big. I'll get to that in a minute. But she's also shown if you do it as a needle roll. And again, so the stitch count on this, 50 by 66. So again, these are not huge. This is not going to take you, you know, a year to get through. Okay, so this is called Potpourri of Stitches. So she's done this particular chart 2 different ways, because she acknowledges that people have sort of said, I really love your stuff, but I either don't like doing the specialty stitches, or I'm too afraid or too intimidated or whatever. So this is an example of a chart where she's given you the chart 2 different ways. So this particular one, so you can do it where it's got a bunch of different specialty stitches in it, but she has also done it where she has done it as all cross stitch. So she's given you the 2 versions. So again, this is Potpourri of Stitches. This is Pins and Needles. And again, so this is one where you can buy the thread pack in 2 different colorways. Now, I don't think it's showing up on camera very well, but there are 2 different colorways that you can do this. Just one. So colorway number 1 is purple and teal. And colorway number 2 is blue and green. So this is the blue and green one. This is the purple and teal way. Or you could pick whatever colors you work for you, which is always an option. She's also got this series of charts called Letters from Mum. Rose Heck on Instagram. So there's 12 ones like this, and then there's a center one called where you actually stitch Letters from Mum. You can finish these in a wide variety of ways. If you just go onto the Facebook groups or Instagram and you look for this, you'll see all sorts of different ways that people have done these. This is one that I have in my stash. I don't even remember what month this is supposed to be. So Let Your Life Speak. Now each of these, this is not where you buy the thread pack separately. The variegated floss that is used in each of these designs comes with the chart. So these are Cottage Garden Sampling Overdyed Flosses. These are cotton flosses. And I know during the height of the pandemic, she was really struggling, one, just because she couldn't get the fibers. One, they didn't have the fiber to dye, then they had to get it dyed, then there were shipping issues because it was coming from Australia. So it caused a huge, big slowdown there. Things are a little bit better. Again, I'm reiterating the supply chain is not 100% back. Let's not kid ourselves. There are still issues. And I feel like the U.S. Postal Service is actually slowing down. Not sure why that is. Anyway. But again, so if you're doing any of the charts from Letters from Mum, they do come with the overdyed, and the rest of it are solids. So there's several of those that I like. I don't know that I have them all in my stash, but okay. So this one, so now we're getting into some of the bigger ones. I'm gonna change the order on this one. Let's do, so this is called a needle and thread sampler. Before I show it, I'm just gonna stop and get the stitch count. So the stitch count on this is 50 by 143. So again, not huge. And let's see if I can. So what the verse says is, a needle pulling thread has not changed from old, as mindful of our stitches a sampler does unfold. So that's what that one looks like. And that's an example of one where now I don't remember where I got it from, whether I bought the, whether you had to buy it together or not, I don't remember. You can always buy the thread pack separately. So this is the thread pack for that particular chart. Okay. So I've tried to take them all out of the bags so that we don't get the glare. So now we're getting into some of her bigger ones. So this one is 105 by 185. So this is called the 4 Seasons. So as you can tell, each one of these little bands walks you through the seasons: spring, summer, autumn, winter. I love this one. There are so many of these that I love in any way, so hence I'm finally starting some of them. And again, this is one where the sheer volume of colors in this, as far as I was concerned, because I wanted to do it in the called for, this is one where it made sense for me to get the thread pack. So here's the thread pack. And 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, at some point during this month, I'm probably going to do a little bit of when you're trying to break one of these out, how do you do it? So check back. That's one of my topics for this month is how do you sort through this? Because I've seen some people sort of say like, I don't, I struggle with these. I don't know what to do. What do you do with them when you're taking them off? What are your options? So that's one. So just, heads up, that's one of my topics for this month. Where exactly it falls into, it's in the back half of this month, but check back. I may have that sorted out by next week, but maybe not. But so 4 Seasons Sampler, love it, love it, love it, love it. She also has other seasonal things. So this is her Halloween sampler, and so she's also got a Christmas sampler. And the thing that strikes me is really odd, even to myself, is so I'm the queen of Christmas. You would think that the Christmas one really appeals to me. And it's okay. But for some reason, and I cannot explain it at all, between the Christmas one and the Halloween, the one that I really like is the Halloween one. I know, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And I didn't bring it with this particular package. So I did buy the floss pack for this. And the thing that's going to shock you all is, here is my fabric choice. So it's a little darker than what she's got called for. When you look at the, what's the called for? So the called for is Confederate Gray by Weeks Dye Works, which is actually more gray than this. So this is, the fact that I'm even going browner is a little bit, none of this makes sense. I cannot explain any of this, but this is how it's working in my head. So this is what I got. So this is this is a 32 count stone gray Lugana from Zweigart. So it is not an over dyed. It's quite brown. It's quite brown. But I don't think that the colors in this particular chart work on something that is terribly gray. So this is, again, so not using the called for. I'm planning on doing it whatever day, whenever that comes up. I am planning on doing this on stone gray Lugana. Again, this is not a typical Judy color. So this fabric is actually living in the bag with the chart, so that I don't know what I would think I would use it for. But I'm keeping them together because I bought it specifically for that particular chart. So it's living in the bag with the chart, so that anytime I pick up the chart, I go, oh, right, you have, so it's ready to go. It's fully kitted. I have the fabric, I have the thread pack, I have the chart. It's ready to go at a moment's notice. Okay, so this is another one called My Story. It does have an American flag here, but what I like about Jeanette is she is Canadian. So I'm sorry, she has not included options for other country flags. So some of the flags are not too bad, where they're either horizontal or vertical stripes. You can usually convert those. Australia gets a little complicated. New Zealand gets a little complicated. Japan, China, like you'll have to sort those things out. Anyway, she has put it does say here, so there's a Canadian flag option included. So she has figured out that she has got Canadian stitchers, like me, and she has included a Canadian flag option for us, which I appreciate. Because I will say the Canadian flag is not necessarily the friendliest flag to try to manipulate into certain designs. And again, so this is an example where I've got the thread pack for it. So there's also a few beads and charms, there we go, right, that are called for in this chart, and those came with the thread pack. Again, you can see some metallics in there, because, why not? All right. So this is, it's still not horrendous. So this next one, the design size is 128 by 145. So I have ones that are bigger. So this is called the Common Thread, and she's actually got a second version of this called the Common Thread 2. So she originally used this as a teaching piece, and I think what happened when she was taking it around is that this particular motif here was different. So she designed a different square for every retreat or class where she was using this as a teaching piece. So if you've got friends and they've got this particular chart and this particular square looks a little bit different, it could easily be because that they were taking a class from her where she was using this as the teaching piece. And eventually, after she teaches it several times and the rest of us are going like, but I want that and I can't go to the retreat or the class or wherever it is, eventually this gets published so it's available to the rest of us. So this one, again, this 2014, this came out. Again, between 2014 and now, there is a second version of this, which I think is actually just called the Common Thread 2. And here's where I did well for myself. I said, there's no reason for you to get the Common Thread 2 when you have not stitched the Common Thread 1. So that's, I'm holding off until I get the Common Thread number 1 stitched. I'm not allowing myself to buy the Common Thread 2. Look at that restraint. Anyway. And then I'm finishing off with this one just because, so Jeanette's heritage is Dutch. And so this is one of the bigger ones again. So this is 162 by 228. And I don't speak Dutch and I'm not going to butcher the name of this particular chart. So I'm just going to hold it up. Holland something. Again, I will put the title of all of these charts in the show notes below. It's very Dutch. It's very Dutch. The tulips, the windmill, sort of, this is structurally, this is how the buildings look. This is very, again, having been to the Netherlands, yeah, even I look at this and go, this is very Dutch, very Dutch. The color palette, all of that. So yeah. Yeah, I think this, yeah, I love this one too. I love them all. This is why they're in my stash. I just need to hurry up and stitch faster. I need to finish that never-ending Nativity. Yeah. Anyway, so those are just a few. I have more. Yes. I love Jeanette stuff. I tend to buy them when I see them and I go, they're glorious. I buy them. It's the whole thing. I need to stitch more. So that was part of, again, that factors into why the stitching plan for 2021 is what it is to get some of these things just started, period. Let's finally get them going. That combined with the fact that I'm doing Flosstube means I'm actually stitching on a much more regular basis because I have to report in and do things. And so all of that is working out really well. And with that, we are sub an hour. So if I wrap it up really quickly, it will be sub an hour. So thank you for stopping by and spending some time with me. I hope you've enjoyed the tour of some of the Jeanette Douglas charts. I am going to put a link to Jeanette Douglas's website. There are lots of online shops. Your LNSs can get them. They are readily available. There may still be some restrictions on the ability to get the thread packs, depending, still having some supply chain issues. But you know, your shop will be able to let you know whether or not there may be, you know, you might be able to get the chart and you might have to wait on the thread pack. If you're, depending on your choice of fabric, that could be a whole other, you know, little episode of how long it's going to take to get that. But I hope you've enjoyed seeing those Jeanette Douglases. I'm going to put a link to the Jeanette Douglas website where you can see all of her charts. I've mentioned this before. She has a number of free charts. So if you just want to try a Jeanette Douglas chart, her free ones also have specialty stitches. So you'll be able to download it. You'll be able to see whether you can that her stitch diagrams for the specialty stitches are great and very easy to follow. So that will be a separate link down below, just the ones where you can get on to see her free charts. Because I've said this before, like, hey, try a free chart, use the DMC colors, and then assess from there, right? No fuss, no muss. Everybody's got DMC in their stash, a free chart, a little bit of fabric. You're ready to go. So I will put those in the links below as well. We're now officially over an hour. Missed it. Anyway, with that, I hope you have a great week. I hope you're having the summer weather that you want. Like I say, I think it's going to be cloudy and rainy for the next several days. I'm totally fine with that. If we have like every other week is glorious weather, that will make me very happy. But this last week was awesome. Loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it. Less stitching time than, I expect to have this week because the weather was so awesome, but that's great. That's what summer's about. Get out, do something fun. So with that, have a great week, guys. Stay safe, stay healthy, find some time to do some stitching, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.